welcome back to my channel. My name is Seetal. You're watching Seetal MD. In today's video, we're gonna do another baby doll dress, but this time I'm kind of stealing a little bit of an inspiration from an Anthropologie baby doll dress that I saw. It looks reasonably easy to make, I guess. If you're new to my channel, then hi, my name is Seetal. I talk about minimalism, productivity, and I do some lifestyle videos, of course, which is the DIY today. If you would like to follow me and you think that this is something interesting and you'd like to follow my journey, then please subscribe below and join our little community that we've formed here. Also, hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I post a video. I post a video twice a week. But anyways, let's get on with today's video. Okay, so the first thing I did was lay my dress just as the yellow blouse down below, where it is slightly diagonal or away from the fold of the paper, about 2 inches. And then I went ahead and copied all around my blouse because that's the size that fits me well, and I added 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, and I also ended the dress about 10.5 inches from my shoulders, with 1/2 inch seam allowance, making it about 11 inches from the top of my shoulders to the bottom where I would like the waist of the dress to start. For the back bodies, I started with a 1 inch wide placket at the fold of the dress. So I wasn't going to cut this piece on the fold, but I was going to cut 2 of these pieces with a 1 inch placket on the center back seam. And then I added 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, except for the center back, which I had already left 1 inch for the placket, as you will see. Next, I measured out the circumference of the armholes as well as the collar and cut out a 1.5 width band for each of them. That was 1.5 times the length of either the collar or the sleeve. And as for the sleeves, after I cut 1.5 times the length of it with a 1.5 width and a 0.25 inch seam allowance, I folded the paper that I cut in half, and then I went ahead and made sort of like this curved diamond shape so that the width of the sleeves would be 1.5 inches in the center with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and at the both ends it will taper down to a 0.5 inch width with, of course, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. As for the collar, I went ahead and did just a simple really long rectangle, which was 1.5 times the length of the neck circumference and a 1.5 inches width and a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I went ahead and cut all my fabric out. I also cut 4 pocket pieces to make 2 pockets into the dress. And as for the length of the dress, I determined my length would be 20 inches from the bottom of my waist till the bottom of the dress. So that would mean that each of my dress tier would be 10 inches long, at 0.5 inches on either side for seam allowance, which would give me 11 inches length, and the width of the dress would be the width of the entire waist times 1.5. I didn't have enough fabric to make a really long lower tier for my dress, so I cut it in 4 and then sewed them together to make a long tier. Before I did any sewing, I took everything to my serger and serged all ends. Next, I sewed a basting stitch along the top of the front of the neck so that I could gather it so it will be as wide as the original blouse that I have. And once I was happy with it, I went over the gathers with a straight stitch just to keep the gathers in place until I attached the collar on. Moving on to the back bodice pieces, with right sides facing, I sewed a 1.1 inch seam allowance on the placket, leaving a 6-inch gap on the top. And once that was done, I opened it up, turned it back to the back and folded the excess seam allowance back on itself twice and then sewed that with a straight stitch on top. And I finished up the opening with a straight stitch so it doesn't open up more than it should. Next, I placed both bodice pieces right side facings on top of one another and pinned and sewed the shoulder seams together. As for the collar piece, I folded it twice on one side to give it a good hem, and then on the other side I gave it a basting stitch so I could gather the collar. I gathered the collar enough so that it would fit around the neck hole, but on either end, before I attached it to the collar, to the neck piece, I folded the collar in twice on itself and then pinned that in place so that when I go ahead to sew the collar piece to the neck of the dress, I would remove this pin, finish off that hem and then attach the hem back onto the bodice piece and sew the collar onto the neck. As I mentioned before, I removed the pin, finished off the hem of the collar before attaching the hemmed collar back onto the bodice piece to sew the collar onto the bodice piece, right sides facing. And I ended the other end of the hem the same way I started the first end. In order to get the ruffles to stay up, I had to push the excess seam allowance back into the dress and sew it onto the bodice piece about 1/4 inch away from the original hem. That way, that would keep the ruffles facing upwards as opposed to falling down and being able to see the inside hem of your dress. And voila, now you have ruffles facing upwards. Now you have to repeat the same process for the arms, the sleeves. First fold twice on one end to give it a good hem, and then give a basting stitch on the other end so that you could make ruffles on it. But because the sleeves are a bit curved, I attach the sleeves, the ruffled sleeves, to the armhole, starting from the shoulder seam out to the sides of the dress, or the sides of the armholes. As mentioned before, repeat the same process as we did for the collar piece. Sew in place the ruffles and then fold the sleeve, the excess hem back onto the bodice piece, and sew that excess hem onto the bodice piece about 1/4 of an inch from the actual seam. And then with the bodice pieces right sides facing each other, finish off by sewing the side seams together. And now we attach the pockets to the top, the first tier of the dress, by attaching it 2 inches from the top on both sides, on both the front and back pieces of the skirt. And sew down that seam about 1/4 of an inch from the end, open it up and sew another 1/4 of an inch top stitch. And once that's done, place both pieces right sides facing on top of one another and sew around the pocket and not through the pocket to be able to make a skirt piece with pockets. Next, I added 2 basting stitches on the front and back pieces of the skirt so I could gather the skirt so it will fit the width of my bodice piece. With the bodice piece right side facing out, place it into the skirt so that the right side of the skirt is facing the right side of the bodice piece, and pin it starting from the side seams and then the center front, center back, and pinning the rest of the skirt to the ruffles to the bodice piece, so that your ruffles are even on all sides and not bunched up on one side more than the other. Finish off with a straight stitch and you're done with the first tier. As for the last skirt tier, place both tiers right sides facing each other, sew down the side seams, and then finish off with a hem on one side and a basting stitch on the other side. Next, repeat the same process by creating ruffles on the lowest tier of the skirt so that it fits the top tier of the skirt, and pin it right sides facing each other, starting from the ends and then the center front, center back, and the rest of the skirt to ensure that the ruffles are nicely placed. I finished off the dress by hand sewing buttons onto the opening of the dress at the back. And that's it. That's the entire dress. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did find it easy to follow or difficult to follow even, do let me know in the comments below and let me know how I can improve this to better suit teaching you how to do these things. And also give it a like if you liked it, share it with your friends and family, and I will see you again soon in my next video. Thank you so much for staying till the end. I love you so much. Thank you all for the support. We're almost reaching 1,000 subscribers. I am so happy, and I'll see you again this week. Bye guys.